a pastor, being a bishop, leading people, communicating with people, the value that you've seen in helping someone to create or having a regimen for yourself of, to help keep you in one accord. And of course, your wife and your family on one accord with Christ. What's the value you see in that, or what are some things that you could share to the viewing public that could help them? So of course, our goal is always if someone can leave with, one tip or one tidbit of information that can help leave them better off, after than they was, before they watched this podcast. That's what we want to try to bring.
And you and Pastor Richardson Will made one of the greatest part of a routine and a regimen to have is prayer. You said that, but oftentimes we don't feed ourselves with the proper spiritual nutrition, because the Bible talks about it's not what goes into a man that defiles, but oftentimes it's what comes out. You have to be careful. If you want, you can suppress and keep some stuff in you, but you still want the right thing to come out of you based on what you have put in you. If I'm gonna say blood pressure stuff, don't eat a lot of salt. If it's just the way I eat, I had to change the way I eat. At one point, years and years ago, I was taking blood pressure medicine, so I had to change the way I was eating. So oftentimes we pray, but then are we putting the right proper nutrition in us to help me to grow, I need to deal with the milk of the word, but then I want to be able to get to the point I can eat some meat of the word. I don't want to be a babe in the Lord forever. So not only do I need to pray, I need to forsake not to assemble. I need to get involved. I need to get into Bible class. I need to come to church. We've got so now, even after the pandemic and with this technology, and I know we spend a lot of time watching it on the Facebook and the YouTube and stuff. But one of the greatest experiences that you can have is for us to come together. For us to come together in fellowship and enjoy that time where iron can sharpen iron and to pour into each other. So you definitely want to have a strong prayer life. My thing I've learned to do, I make it my goal every day. Not only do I pray, but I'm gonna read something every day. I'm gonna read the Bible, but I try to read other secular books and stuff. And you heard me talk about other black artists, Dubo. I got so many different other. I read a book by Dr. Brian. And there's a statement in that book he made. If we allow ourselves to be hindered and distracted, it would be very unlikely that we would ever reach our full potential. If we are you gotta stay focused. You gotta have a regimen. You gotta pray. If I'm gonna be effective and have an effect and affect change in people's life, I myself gotta first experience it my own self. So I pray. I read every day. I read every day. It doesn't, I may read so many chapters, I may deal with a subject and stuff or a different thing, but I want to read intake, because it's not oftentimes what oftentimes comes out of us is the result of not the right proper spiritual nutrition going in us. If I put the right nutrition in me, it's gonna come out of me. And so at the proper time, like you said, our families, when you're having in a meeting that it get a little, sometimes even with wives and situations, one of the things we've got to know each other though, and I heard Pastor you talk about the wife and the marriage, learning each other. I wish that I can say that I'm 64, my wife 60, so irregardless of our spiritual mindset, we still got to understand each other from a human development perspective. We can't separate those two places, because oftentimes we'll think it's because we are constantly going through human development. But as for a spiritual regimen, you definitely got to pray. If you got a strong prayer life, oh my God, God can intervene, and even when we don't know what to pray, the Spirit will make intercession for us through groaning. When you got a strong prayer life and in tune with God, and be willing to listen to God, because sometimes God gonna speak to you in so many different ways. He'll speak audible, he'll speak to you. Sometimes God won't even say nothing, he'll just like what he told, what you said, Will, he'll tell you, I've been here all the time, Sometimes God will tell you, do this, but if you have trained yourself, you gotta train yourself. And it's not just a Wednesday situation, it's not just a Sunday experience. You got to train yourself every day to become who God wants you to become.
And I'll sum it up by saying this. Brother Eddie Richardson said something a while ago, and like I said, I'm good for putting stuff to memory, and I take heed and take note of everything that's going on around me. And he made the statement that true prosperity is walking with God daily, and that's why we need a spiritual regimen to move forward, to have true prosperity. Because if you have true prosperity spiritually, it's impossible not to have true prosperity in the world. See you in a minute. Welcome back to Closing the Gap. Of course, we're going to pick back up and kick back off. We're having a great time, a lot of wonderful information, great content. Looking hopefully, all blessed to be a blessing. So that's what we want to do. We want to continue to give. I'm definitely blessed to be receiving right now from these wonderful gentlemen. So I'm trying to receive as much as I can and put it into practice in my own life. And I'm still in the gym with a nugget from each one of them. I do it all the time, but I've been doing it since I've known them. So that's part of my practice and that's part of my spiritual regimen, and just finding great God-fearing men and watching the way they walk and listening to the way they talk and pulling information and knowledge and wisdom from them to add it to me in my life to hopefully make my life better, and hopefully I can pour it into my family, my kids, and hopefully maybe pass it on to somebody else along the way. So that's the way I look at God. We all called to be fishers of men. So I do a little fishing myself every now and then. So we just gonna keep it going. But picking back up where we left off, we kind of talked about the importance of having a spiritual regimen. And the benefit that does, and create some balance, create some consistency, because obviously we know consistently doing the right thing over a long period of time is what generates success. That's what I tell clients all the time. They come in and say, hey, Mr. Hamilton, I want to get from here to here. I want to change my financial life. I'm like, well, it's going to take discipline and consistency. Consistently doing it over a long period of time. I wish it was a quick fix. I wish we can go out and hit the lottery tomorrow and I can tell you what numbers to play. I wish we could do that, but it don't work that way. So we got to consistently do those right things, and that spiritual regimen helps to build that foundation to be able to go forward and doing that. And one thing it's extremely popular now. I think more than ever, and I feel like it's almost it's not a coincidental occurrence. I think it's almost, I don't want to say by design, but I can see it. It's almost felt like the decline in the church is created or made the need or necessity for a rise in therapists. Because when you look at it, I think when I was a kid, we didn't hear a lot of people saying they had therapists or going to therapists. Because I feel like, the pastor was a therapist at that time. The church was where you went to get him. You knew that, grandmama gonna come pray for, hey, bring baby to the house. We gonna lay some hands on her. We gonna do some things. And we gonna get into that word. And that was our way of form, I feel like, of counseling, of therapy. And I feel like with the decline of, the prevalence and the foundational aspect of, what I feel like I grew up in having a church home, having that foundation, mama making sure I was at church, at Bible study, doing those things. And of course that, I feel like every generation it's kind of been, has dropped off to a certain extent. I think COVID obviously didn't help it, because that took us to separate us even more. We just, from a community standpoint, we're not as together as we used to be. We used to have a greater sense of community, and I think that's increased the need, in my opinion, for therapists and the need for them. So it's not that they don't serve a purpose, they don't have it, it's not a need for them. I'm just always cognizant of, okay, who I receive my message from, and who I'm talking to, and what we're talking about. So for me, that's just something I've kind of looked at, and I've kind of gauged from afar, and I'm like, is the decline of the church the reason for the rise in the number of therapists that are needed? Because, like I say, one is kind of feeding off the other. But you all both operate in those in those fields, to say the least. And can I'll start with you on this, and as the elder statesman in the room, and having been done this in counsel, couples and individuals. What is the biggest difference between what you do as a pastor versus what a therapist would do?
That is a very, very good question, Will, because the reason why I said the rise of mental illness now has changed the whole trajectory and dynamics of how we counsel people. And I wish that I could say that every counseling situation and therapy, when you are talking to people, is spiritual. Sometimes people need to talk to somebody from a medical perspective. Now, what I've learned as a pastor, to be wise enough to, because the laws done changed now with PTSD and how mental illness is so strong now. I've learned as a pastor to be able to know if this is a situation that I'm gonna give them my advice and talk to them, but there oftentimes I refer people to people that from a medical perspective, because now with mental illness is so strong. Now when I look back over my life, man, and I go back being in the church, getting out of them streets some 40 some years ago and changing my life, and we would be praying and for people, but then the realization of some of the issues, they really needed to get some medical help. And so you, as a wise pastor, and I've seen a lot of the old bishops in time past, man, praying, and when people really needed medical, so you have to be, as a pastor and a leader over God's people, to know and to, Luke was a physician, so don't shun the medical help. Bipolar issue, mental illness is so strong now, and people are dealing with so much now. You've got to be wise enough, because the laws have changed now. People's will sue you, and people's are. So when you think about therapy and now, you gotta be wise about what you tell people, and because we pray for things and we fast. Even the scripture talk about how this kind and comes out, but through by prayer and fasting, we're gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. But I still may need to refer you to get some things on record to not only protect myself, but protect my church and help that individual to really get the help that they need to get. So oftentimes we shun away from getting them the medical help. They can work hand in hand, but you got to be wise enough to get people the proper help that they need to get.
Okay.
Yeah, that's major key, and appreciate you for placing this on the floor, because I think we are counseling people through this. As you stated, many people don't have a church home, they're not in a community, and the way that they get the most of their information is through podcasts and things of that nature. So I appreciate you for bringing a topic like this to the forefront, to put it, out here so that whoever may watch it can receive some godly guidance for that. And to the point that Bishop Carter stated, as pastors, we definitely have to be very careful now. We do live in a society of litigation.
Don't we know that?
Yeah. You know it firsthand. The experience. Like people, they'll sue you for anything. And that does not, as Bishop stated, that does not say that we in the church are not going to pray, are not going to fast. Yeah. But we do have to use that godly wisdom to see which situations need what. Now, all of them need prayer and fasting, but some need additional. And I think that's the story that's part of the lesson that Jesus was teaching, even when he said some things only come about through prayer and fasting, was telling the disciples that you thought you were going to be able to just handle this situation this way, but that situation needs more than what you gave it. Also, when we're talking about therapy and counseling, I think we also have to take into account that God has his servants everywhere. And while we as pastors are in the church and provide counseling, we also have to trust that when somebody needs financial advice, that we have a godly financial company in Hamilton, Wealth Advisors, that we can send them to.
Exactly.
Right. We can go to scriptures and talk about how you should take care of your money, but more so, we're just going to give you an intro. But to get the real financial help you need, we're going to send you to the man of God that has a financial advisement company. And so we have to keep that same mindset when we're dealing in all aspects of the world, and be able to receive advice. And I think part of the issue that you stated about now in this society, one of the issues I think too is many of the elders are not taking the responsibility to provide wise counsel. I think about Moses as he tried to adjudicate every case that came before him. He listened to his father-in-law Jethro, who came to him and said, "Hey son, you can't hear all these people."
Exactly.
And he broke down a structure for him. Now Jethro wasn't the one that was listening to the cases. He wasn't the one that was called of God to do that, but he saw the struggle and the strain of his son-in-law. And he heard from God. I would say, scripture doesn't say it, but I say it. He heard from God, and God allowed him to go and tell his son-in-law how to structure and be able to really care for the people. And so that's what Bishop Carter is saying as well. We're in a Moses position, but Jethro has told us that there are some godly people in some counseling firms that we can send them to get the aid that they need. And then part of our prayer and fasting needs to be also that when we send them out, that who they encounter, or that they have a regimen like you have, that before you see a client, like you said, you're going to pray and ask God to lead you. And so we're going to pray that whoever that person goes and sees in counseling, we're going to pray that they are praying and that they are allowing God to lead them in what they're doing. And I'll end my part on this. My wife and I, during a phase in our relationship, had to seek some counseling. We prayed, we fasted, and a lot of the work that we needed to do in our household did come from us humbling ourselves to God and being vulnerable with one another. But then we also found some good help through some counselors, that we did some research, found Christian counseling, and they were able to give us some guidance and give us some affirmation of some things that we could work on, that we didn't necessarily see at the moment, but they helped us see it and helped us get grounded and reach a new plateau in our relationship with God, with one another, through God.
Man, that's powerful, and that kind of leads us to one of the questions I definitely want. I'm gonna throw to the Ken first, and Eddie probably gonna come back and chime in a minute, but and you kind of leaned into the marriage counseling, couples counseling, and how do you feel? Do you believe every couple should get counseling before they get married, and do you think couples should get counseling during their marriage? How do you feel about that? And I know you've counseled some couples. You definitely counseled me on time too. And gave me some advice, because one thing I'll tell before I let Ken go is he told me before I got married, he said, look, the vows say for better, for worse. It don't tell you when the for better or for worse gonna come, but just know they say for better or for worse. Sometimes the for worse come first, and you got to deal with that to get to the better. So with that being said, I'm gonna turn it over to Pastor Carter, because he know me, he know my life, he know what I've been through. So he's helped me along the way.
That's a good one, and that's a scripture that I believe in Proverbs, where there's no counseling, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. Mm-hmm. So counsel, premarital counseling, after marriage and during, even, it is necessary. Now, one thing that I've learned, and this is me as a pastor, if oftentimes when I'm sometime I refuse to be the one to counsel the person, because sometimes you get into a situation where the person, and if I know Will, then Dr. Hammond, she may kind of feel some that I'm gonna be biased. So now with me, oftentimes with counseling, sometimes I will refer people to a counselor, that neither one of them know. And I know we're talking about from a marriage perspective, but now when I heard Pastor as in this whole situation here about from a financial perspective, the reason why I can refer people to Will from a financial perspective is that I trust him. See, it's all about trust. And oftentimes when people allow you to counsel them, they have to have some kind of trust. And I'll refer people to Will because I trust him with my own livelihood. So when it comes to counseling, and people have to trust you, because now you're trying to get people to not only open up to you, but to admit, counseling is oftentimes you got to admit that, hey, you're wrong. And then that I wrong you, and I need some counseling, I need some guidance, I need some direction, how to not wrong you like that. And so where there's no counsel, people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. Get people in a right position for them to succeed. I know there's some other financial advisors out there and people but it's all about trust. I trust Will. I trust him from the finance. I trust him. We have built a relationship of trust. Before we do anything, deal with it, it's all about trust. I can trust him. Can you trust the person that you're going to get counseling? And I'm gonna say that, and Pastor know that oftentimes, if there's not a relationship of trust, people have your business some everywhere. But you know, and I believe Rico, and I'm gonna just interject you in this conversation. We'll go to everybody else for counseling, to the street committee, to the the ones that know they are not qualified to give us the proper help that we need. But those be the ones we run to oftentimes instead of getting the proper help. We'll see something flashing, especially from an investment standpoint. What's flashing, what's shining out there, and that's what we'll run to a lot of time instead of going for somebody to give you a solid structure, special structure, because we're not willing to wait a lot of time. We want it overnight, and as we were saying, we're not willing to get that help that we need. This is someone structure you like this, and it may not happen the next day or the next week. You're gonna have to wait. But it's a structure. If you do it and follow it, it's gonna come out. All things work together for the good to them that love God, who are the called according to His purpose. So it's gonna come out good if you stick with it.
Brothers, unless you got anything to add to
that's excellent. As Bishop Carter was speaking just then, I'm thinking about, as he brought Rico in about, and to those that didn't hear, Rico spoke about how people go to social media and, because that's what's accessible.
Yeah.
The phone is in your hand at all times. So, and that's why I think that they came up with different apps and stuff for different counselors and things. And people try to go to what's, as you said, Bishop, they try to go to what's sexy, what's sensual, what's shining. And that's not always best. I think scriptural wise, in 1 Kings 12, when King Rehoboam began to lead the people, he, his father's counselors, the older, wiser ones, told him how he needed to lead the people.
Exactly.
And they said, hey, if you do it this way, you're going to be able to have the people, and they're going to listen to you, and they're going to do everything you want. But he instead turned to his friends, the street committee.
Exactly.
And when he turned to the street committee, and he took their counsel instead, and everybody turned against him. He lost the country, and so we have to be careful who we seek the counseling from. What type of experiences have those persons had that make them give the type of counsel that they give? I think that's definitely important. Looking at them, what are they doing? What I'm saying? How are their lives? What type of, as you say all the time about, you can judge character. Mm-hmm. You can feel a person's spirit. Yep. What I'm saying? That's a gift that you have. And oftentimes, everybody doesn't have that gift, but I do think that if you seek to know, then you will find out what you really want to know. Yeah. And I think that's a word for everyone, is that if you really want to know and you really want to get down to the root of some things, if you really turn and you just quiet yourself and pray and ask God, then God will show you who you need to listen to, where you need to go, what you need to do. And thing is, you have to trust that still small voice and realize and look at where is it sending me? Is it sending me to something that's dangerous, or is it sending me to something that's safe? I would say it like that. And usually God's spirit is going to send you to safety. He's not going to send you into danger, into peril, to lead you to destruction. He's not going to make you do something that's going to harm somebody else or lead you to somebody that is going to lead you in that way. So we just have to settle ourselves. Settle ourselves. I think we're in a rush too much these days. And that's the beauty of what the pandemic did for a moment. I think we have to go back and reflect on that a lot of times. Reflect on the patience that the shutdown had. Regardless to whether you believe in whatever you believe in, you get a lot of skeptics when you start talking about whether or not we should have been shut down and, where the virus comes from, so strike all of that away and just think about how life was for those moments, of just being able to just sit where you were, even good or bad, where you were and reflect back on that and say, hey, now let me take some similar time, even if it's just an hour, to do the same thing to move myself forward in seeking what I need from God to live right now.
Well, absolutely. Well, I can tell you firsthand from my own personal experience, if you ask God a question, He gonna give you the answer. Now, you may not like that answer, but one thing I can promise you, that answer's not gonna change. So you can ask Him again tomorrow, the next day, or next week, the answer's gonna still be the same. It's not gonna change. So, that being said, closing the gap, the truth about black wealth. I mean, and, at the end of the day, like I say, people come to me all the time asking about investment ideas and tips and tricks and all these different things. And, the most valuable thing that you can have and what's going to build generational wealth in our communities, like Pastor Carter said, is that trust. If I trust you and you trust me, we can work together and build a brighter future for tomorrow. See you next time.